All right, well, welcome back. Here we are after having 10 minutes of pre-banter.
Which we recorded.
We did, but we will not share. Sorry.
That'll be for the subscriber edition. The Patreon.
The Patreon?
Patreon, what is that?
Well, welcome back to Not for Sunday Mornings. I am Chris, and I am here with my good friend.
Yeah, Steve.
Steve, yeah, introduce yourself. And so we, this week, Steve preached again.
Again, it's the first time in a while. 3 weeks.
I feel like we reversed roles a little.
I know. This is wild.
But he did the story of Cain and Abel.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was fun. It was, Insider Baseball, we always give a little bit, but like we talked a little beforehand and the difficulty because it's such a short story. I think it's like 17 verses, 14 verses, something like that. It's
the whole chapter is only 26. So they end up at about 16 verses.
Yeah, so it's not a lot to go off of, and it's an interesting story, you know, when we go from there. And so
lots of questions.
Lots and lots of questions.
Lots of stuff didn't make the sermon.
And there really, for such a short story, like it's interesting how much there really is in there and how much we can talk about or debate or look at.
We should probably say that on the front end. We're going to have some different conversations today. So just have
challenging conversations.
So have an open heart and understand we're discussing.
Again, we're idiots here that are talking about things, and so we're not here to we're here to challenge. We're here to talk about and think and challenge thinking. Really, is what it's all about.
And to be challenged.
And to be challenged. Yeah. And so. There's going to be some interesting things that we'll bring up, and so bear with us. And again, you can always write in and let us know like what fools we are and why, and we'll be more than happy to tell other people.
And I'll read the letter. I read whatever you send. So.
That's true. So,
including profanities. So if you want,
we do have a censor button, don't we?
We do somewhere.
Somewhere. Yeah. Like don't just hit that, making people think I'm
swearing,
cussing on it. All right. Anyways,
so what did you like?
It was, gosh, your story. I always love when you tell the stories. No, like you do a good job on those aspects, and
well, people don't know is you help with the creative element of it as far as the lights and because it's really a partnership with that. Like I'll write the narrative or have some fun with that, but then you'll come in Saturday and be like, hey, are we doing anything fun with the lights? And then I hand that over to you, and because we were debating whether I sit or stand, or do I sit? Do I go down? And you have complete control over that. People don't know that. Like, I submit to you in that, and I just trust you with that. And so you're like, sit there, look that, and we did it, and it was fun. It was fun. It was different. I wanted to do something different where I wasn't reading from the iPad, so I did have the words on the back screen because I wasn't confident that I had it memorized.
Yeah, it was a long story. I mean, not long, but
and there were a lot of words in there I wanted to really hit. It was some fun.
Very specifics, yep.
And so I did cheat there a little bit.
That's not cheating.
But, it was fun. It was fun. The one thing about the lights is it does blind you, and I never practiced with that.
Right.
And so, during the run through Sunday morning, I was seeing spots. It was a little rough.
Yeah, I feel like I'm having dealt with lights for a very long time, and knowing better, but still knowing how to do my job the right way. And lights have changed in like outside of our Bible talk. Yeah. Lights have changed in the last 20 years.
Yeah, and Chris, people don't know Chris did lights for plays
theaters
and
stuff and like that. And so as a side gig, nothing heavy. But they used to actually produce heat, and so you could stand in the light and you could like know that you're in the light because you would feel the heat from that light. Now with LEDs, you don't feel that anymore, and so now you have to look.
Look at
to
the light.
See where that light is actually pointed at in order to know that you've aimed it properly. Like you do it long enough and you can aim them pretty well, but you got to be spot on with them. Like you do have to look, and I know I'm going to be blind by the time I'm like 80 because I've looked into the lights so many different times, and they're magnified. That there's like a magnifying lens in front of them that does that, but. Yeah. So, anyways, no, their stories are always good, and I tried to emulate that when I did it with Gideon. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I did as good of a job. I don't know. You just do it so much better. I have a hard time keeping it cryptic.
Yeah, that's my favorite part. I always like to bury the lead. I try my best to bury the lead, and so because I think it creates intrigue, and it's like watching a movie.
Yeah, yeah.
And for me, there was a line I was studying this week where one of the commentators just made a one-off comment about Adam teaching his boys how to tend the fields and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, whoa, he did help raise them. And what was that like? And that got my mind going into this whole, again, it's a creative and there's no biblical thing behind it. All we know is Cain killed Abel. We don't know.
Right. We don't know any of the other family.
We don't know how he killed them. We don't
know.
We don't know how old they were. We don't. So I did take quite a few liberties with that. But also I thought for me, it humanized the moment, and
it does. And like when you pull from commentators or when you pull from historical texts, so like we've referenced the Midrash here before, which really is the original Bible commentary, right? Like this is what the Jewish scribes and rabbis would use to explain these stories, especially when you have something like Cain and Abel, where it's so short, like what's really going on here, and trying to give it more depth to and more meaning. And so, like, it's nice to see that because you're not the first person to do it. And I think sometimes people, when they're sitting and they hear, or when they're sitting and listening to what they, we call a sermon or a message that, they're like, oh, it's not biblical. What you're saying is not biblical. And like they hang their hat on that. It's like, yeah, but people have been doing this since the Bible, since the Torah, right? I mean, it's been, this is not a new concept. Is we want to have a better understanding. So like, I know sometimes we rip a little bit on The Chosen, but like it's that same concept and idea, right? It's trying to give meaning to this. Yeah. So it's meaningful.
Yeah. And for me growing up, Max Lucado, say what you want about him now or whatever, but his writings had a huge influence on me because I always thought he wrote like where the blanks are at. Like he would fill in the blank spots, and it would like add art and add thoughts and just, I don't know, bring the text alive. And so for me, I love movies. I love The Simpsons, and I love creative stuff. So for me, that's my personal bent. I've probably been too far. But that's also the way I am.
Yeah, so. But I also think as long as you're not like being heretical in what you're saying, I don't see anything wrong in it. Because there was a book written a long time ago on Paul, and it was a fictionalized book, right? But one of the things that always stuck with me was like the beauty of like, Peter has his dream, right? And he realizes everything is okay to eat. Like now he's not stuck by Jewish law and tradition, and he can eat whatever. And he's like the only apostle that really takes in this book. Like they made him the only apostle who really took full advantage of that. So like he was always having like indigestion and everything from eating all these things he was never able to eat before. And it was just kind of a funny like take, but it's okay. Like there's nothing wrong with that. We know he probably did. If once God tells you like everything's good, go for it, go ahead and do it. So anyways, there was a lot in there, and I think we're going to unpack a lot of the stuff I liked because I know I've used the line in my brother's keeper in an ironic manner sometimes with other people, like but there's real hard depth to that, and I know we tried to cover that. You tried to cover that a little bit in the sermon. The idea of the sacrifices too, like you briefly touched on that, but I think we'll cover more of that in depth. And so there's some good points that you brought up throughout there. And I think before, because I tried not to influence any more than just having read the book. And so I dug into some commentaries after your sermon. I think that you'd made mention, I had forgotten that in Hebrews, there's a mention about Abel's sacrifice in there. And there's actually a couple callbacks in the New Testament.
There's a lot. Cain
and Abel.
Jesus speaks about it. Jude has a huge section about the way of Abel. That was actually in the sermon up till Saturday afternoon, and then it just didn't.
Yeah. So getting a little ahead of the story. But anyways, all right. So we got a lot to talk about actually with this little tiny story. And so, what did you leave out intentionally? I know we just started a little bit on that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Abel doesn't speak at all. There's no words attributed to Abel through the whole story, which is, I think, unique. And for me, one of the lines I had was that his gift spoke more. He didn't need words, whereas Cain uses a lot of words. Abel's gift was all that needed to speak. It also, I think, though, hints at his name, because Cain, we talk about what Cain's name means, and Abel's names means breath. which I thought was kind of a neat because it's like his life is a breath. Really, it's a quick. It's like a neat,
Yeah, and so Cain's being
acquired or helped by God. Kind of, there's an element of that.
There's that element, and then there's the element of like it being a weapon too.
Okay, I didn't notice
so
that.
I forget where I read that, but like I saw the word spear associated with them or used, and so like, which is ironically interesting at the same time, right? Because he's what's a spear used for, right? But yeah, that idea of Abel is that vapor was another term I used to see it, right?
Yep.
That we're here 1 minute, we're gone the next kind of situation.
Yeah, it's wild. Another thing that didn't make it was the crouching. And I hinted at we're going to talk about it today, and where it says sin is crouching at your door, and just the visual of that. I saw it was a well-known Mesopotamian demon, Rapsu, who lingers at doorways. And so sin is always portrayed as a doorway demon waiting for its victim to cross the threshold. And as I thought about that, I don't know if you've seen Sinners, the movie Sinners, the new movie.
I don't think so.
Oh, it's so good. I mean, it's R-rated and it's an adult movie, and so not an endorsement of the movie, but it's a great movie. And there's these zombie people, but they have to be invited into the house to do anything. They cannot come in the house on their own.
Like a vampire almost.
They are vampires, not zombies. Vampires, yeah. They got to be invited in, and so they're outside the door, and they're like, "Hey, Brent, let us come in," and it's that idea of like, same thing here. Like, how are you going to respond? What choice are you going to make? Are you going to open the door? Are you going to let them in? How close do we have to get to sin? Why do we got to keep going to the edge? Why do we got to go as far as we can? Right. You know what I mean? And so for me, that was a neat little cultural throwback, and a neat fact that in that moment, Cain has a choice. Even after his gift, he still has a choice to do what is right. And
exactly. Now, did you? I don't remember if you said it in the sermon. Did you say this is the first time sin is used?
Yeah, first time the word sin is used. Yeah, which I thought was neat. I don't know.
Well, no, I think it's interesting because I think the words I know our words that we read are translation of another language, but there's still an interesting choice in the words, and I'm going to come to a point with that. I don't think that you might not be aware of, but like there was an interesting choice of words in this story.
Okay,
that we can talk about later. But continue. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, and then the mark that Cain got, the mark that God gave him. Some believe it wasn't an actual mark; it was a sign. And some commentators believe that the sign was actually the city he went to. Like that was the idea. Like it was the cities, because later on we'll know in the Old Testament there were cities where people, if you killed somebody, you could go to and not get killed.
Oh, yeah.
It was a safe place, and while your trial was
awaiting.
It was just a safe place. And
and the reasoning why, so people understand, is that there was what was called blood vengeance back then, right? So you had the right. So you have to remember all of what we're talking about now, if biblical times, is taking place before the law is given, right? And so while we understand that murder is wrong, and I think even in the beginning they understood murder was wrong, it didn't. If someone murdered, it was an eye for an eye. Yeah. It was the Hammurabi Code idea, and so people did need protection when that happened. Yeah. So
yeah. And then in a complete showing us when we take scripture out of context, the danger of that, there was actually, I don't want to even, well, I'll say how absurd it is. There was a belief for a while that Cain's mark was that he was black, that God made him black.
Yes, I've heard that. Yeah.
Because this was when people were enslaved. And so it was a way to use scripture and
that's funny too, because one of Noah's son is, so when you get to Noah, and his story, he curses one of his sons, right? And so there's old commentary that's the same thing. Yeah. Like that the sons are, so they are fruitful and multiply, right? So they populate the entire earth, and so that son, I believe it's Ham, is what ends up populating Africa. And it's like such a bizarre and stupid thing.
Well, it's absurd because Cain's line gets destroyed in the flood. Right. So if they're it's so backwards, and it's again a misrepresentation of scripture. When we take scripture out of context, we can make it say whatever we want.
Yep.
And use it.
And we can use it wrongly
for terrible purposes.
And people take it and they use it like a club. And that's the worst part in all reality, because when we do stuff like that, what we end up doing is we're not showing the love that we need to show. So people use the Bible as a club, and they use it to beat instead of like understanding that the purpose is to teach us so that we can do what God ultimately wants us to do is love Him and love our neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're right. Yeah, we want to be cautious, and there's going to be some irony in that because we're going to take some verses and we're going to talk about them, and we want to be cautious when we do that we're not taking them out of context.
Yeah. So another thing that didn't make the sermon, and actually this is probably the last thing before we talk about how to read Genesis, is the end of the story where we learn more about Cain's family after the fact, and we're introduced to Lamech, and so this is what it says in verse 23. Lamech said to his wives, Adhere and Zillah, hear my voice. You wives of Lamech, listen to what I say. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. If Cain's revenge is sevenfold, then Lamech's is 77-fold. And what's interesting about this story is it shows how far sin has gone. Because here is a man who now has, God says, you have a wife. He has now taken a second wife, right? He's crossed that line. He is he's brash, he's arrogant. He kills a guy because the guy basically
wronged him. Yeah.
And then he claims, well, if Cain's protected, I'm even more protected. And what's neat is what's interesting, he doesn't even cry out to God for help here. He doesn't mention God's name at all.
Right.
He takes it to such a far point. It just, for me, it just shows the idea of how sin has progressed and getting farther and farther away from the perfect, farther and farther away from Eden. And then what's neat, and this I didn't talk about this either. And Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and called his name Seth, for she said, God had appointed for me another offspring instead of Abel, for Cain killed him. To Seth also a son was born, and he called him Enosh. And at the time, people began to call upon the name of the Lord. And that last phrase there, "call upon the name of the Lord," I think is so interesting, because that's the 70th time that the word Lord is used up to this point in the Bible, which is kind of a neat little number game there. So that's the 70th time, and this is a moment of where now the seed of is going to progress. It's going to go one direction, where Cain's went this way. Now we're going to go in a different direction, And I just think that was a neat. Neat little math problem there. So yeah, I didn't talk about any of that. So.
Oh, well, I like that. Numbers are always fun in the Bible because trying to stray away from numerology as much as possible, there is value in numbers in certain times. Like 40 is a very significant number, 7 is a very significant number, 3 is a very significant number, right? Like there are significances to numbers. So I like that. That's an interesting concept or idea that goes with that. Yeah.
So then, for me, the bigger things that I didn't talk about, and actually we debated even talking about it on the podcast.
Yeah,
because I think
it's controversial in the church, and I think it's something I avoid talking whenever I have the opportunity to. But
so Cain. So a couple of things. Cain is afraid of somebody murdering him. Who is that? And he goes off and he marries. There's other people around, and who are they, and why are they there, and what are we talking about? And so I have a couple of thoughts, and I figured we could spend some time here. This is things I wrote down. People have come up with all kinds of theories about who exactly Cain was afraid of. The truth is the Bible just doesn't seem all that interested in answering that question. It assumes that there are other people around, but it doesn't explain where they came from, how they got there. And that tells us something important. Part of reading Scripture faithfully is paying attention to what it emphasizes, not just chasing our own curiosities. The early chapters of Genesis aren't trying to satisfy every question we might have about ancient history or human origins. They're telling a theological story, one that would help the people of Israel understand their place in the world as they entered the promised land. And then we talk about where did Cain get his wife, and this story hints that there are more people in the world than Adam, Eve.
For sure.
In fact, enough people to build a city.
Yep.
And enough for Cain to be afraid of.
Yep.
Enough for there to be other families.
Yep.
And I know Eve is called the mother of all living. That's probably not a literal biological lesson, right?
Possibly, yeah.
It's more like a parable telling the truth about human nature, sin, family, responsibility in a way that's deeply meaningful, even if not neatly historical in the way we read. Genesis is telling a true story about God, creating people, giving them freedom and boundaries, and how those boundaries were crossed with consequences that still ripple through our lives. And to do that, the author uses familiar storytelling patterns, cultural references, and a narrative structure that isn't concerned with keeping every detail tidy, and that's okay.
Yep.
Parables don't have to fit together perfectly to be true.
Yep.
Yeah, the power lies in what they reveal, not in what they resolve.
Yep.
And so how do we do that?
Okay. So knowing that, because I think I think we came to the conclusion that we were going to address this yesterday at the end of the preaching and everything. We're like, we need to address this.
Yeah,
and
because for me, it's a glaring, as I read scripture, it's a glaring like, whoa.
And I think we talked about this when I preached on Noah. Like there are two parts of the Bible people hang their hats on, and they have to be true, or if they are true, like they're just stumbling blocks. And I wish they weren't. Personal journey. I went through my degrees in biology. For people who don't know, my undergrad degree is in biology, and I taught biology for 15 years. It was a stumbling block as a Christian, going through that degree and working through that. And again, going back to the verse, work out your faith with fear and trembling, right? Your salvation, right, with fear and trembling. And so without going into too much depth, like, I understand it. Like I can come from both sides, and that's where working through my salvation with fear and trembling, I came to the conclusion that my God is powerful enough to do everything that the Bible says he does exactly, or do it in a totally different way that the Bible doesn't clearly specify to people who were nomadic wanderers that had no clue what science was or anything like that. I can live with that, and it's okay. And I hope and I pray that, we when we talked Revelations and we talked about what heaven was like a little bit, my hope and pray is whatever the afterlife looks like when we're totally all said and done here, is I get the opportunity to figure out what's real. And just because that's me and that's my curiosity, I know some people don't care, but some of us do, and some of us are it's important to us. But so going into this, I looked at like, well, how did scholars originally read this? Not Christian scholars, but how did the rabbis read Genesis? And this actually goes with any way that they read. They have a system that's summarized. It's called PARDES is its summarization. It's an acronym, and it's PRDS, and each one has a Hebrew name. So there's the Peshat, which is what's the plain literal meaning. So I read this, what is it literally saying on the surface? There's the Remez, which is what's the hinted meaning? Is it allegory or is there symbolism that's going on here? There's the Darash, which is the homiletic or the midrashic meaning, which is what's it trying to teach me, right? And then there's the Sod, and this is the hidden meaning or the mystical meaning. And a lot of that gets into the Kabbalah and just kind of looking at that a little bit. And so like we can look at, for example, creation in 6 days, right? So literal is created 6 days, rested on the seventh. The Daresh, which comes out of the Midrash, the days may represent ages, they may represent a pattern, they may be a divine attribute of some sort. We don't know, but it's open to our interpretation at that point. The mystical, the 6 days align with divine emanations in the Kabbalah, and the Rashi is that even he reads the days literally and allegorically, exploring the meaning of the light before the sun. And so, like, there's again, So even when the traditional Jewish reading of the creation story, there's still a lot left for interpretation, and it's okay, and the rabbis were okay with that, and they were the ones this was written for, right? And so looking at that, and so we can take this story too with Cain and Abel, and take that looking at it and seeing exactly what happened, and the beautiful part about the Midrash, if you ever like take the time and actually read it, it's beautiful because. Like it'll write like, well, this rabbi said this, and this rabbi said this, and these rabbis are saying this. And so you get all those various interpretations. It's like having a commentary Bible, but you have all the commentaries of all the biggest names, like of every huge theologian of the time, commenting on what was really being said.
Yeah, we call that Logos. I have that.
I tried using that. It's good. But yeah. So let's talk about this, right? So you said, where are these people coming from? So from my research into the Midrash is that some of the rabbis believe that pretty much Eve gave birth to twins all the time. Twins or triplets on occasion. Very rarely solo people. So like Seth is an example of solo, Abel and Cain are solo individuals, but pretty much everyone else is a twin. And this actually gets into the idea of the murder as well, in the Midrashic interpretation. And so the idea is that all these people are literally born of Eve. They're just family, right? There's I don't want to call it secular, but we can, because it's not, it's non-biblical, is that, that Eve is an allegorical character, right? And that you have people that have just existed, the tribes and clans of people. And maybe this is a story of a particular tribe or clan that's existing. And so there are others that are out there, right? So I think those are your two big sides, right? In terms of where you want to look at. I don't think it matters. I mean, in all reality.
Okay, but what about the inherent word of God? And if this isn't true, then what else isn't true?
So I don't, because Jesus would tell things with stories also, right? He used parables. And he would, everyone knew.
It also says, this is a parable.
That's true. But we're talking about Jesus trying to teach a lesson, right? And we're talking, and if we want to, and as all of history has done up to this point, this is written by Moses, right? And so what's Moses's purpose in doing this, right? Again, it's I think these are traditional stories that have been told time and time again that we've lost the details to. I think there was a commentator I read, like, if you read chapters 1 and 2 of Genesis, it's like reading Chicken Licken. There's this kind of like repetition that always goes through, and it's very simplistic in what it's saying. You get to chapters 3 and 4, and you come to a more complex story like Cinderella, where you and I can read it and we can know what it's saying, but the actual deeper meaning, because Cinderella is written like Middle Ages, so there was a meaning to Cinderella that was deeper. And actually, the one they used with Cinderella, I'm going to use Hansel and Gretel, because I know some of the deeper meaning to Hansel and Gretel. And so there is this deeper meaning to Hansel and Gretel that does not resonate with us, that most people, when they read the story of Hansel and Gretel, don't even know exists. And so, and in terms of what it's telling us as a story. And so these are those stories that are happening too. The fact that, in chapter 3, you have the getting kicked out of Eden, right? In chapter 4, you have this murder of, and the first, let's call real sin in this regard. And so we just don't understand what those are. And the author chose not to put them in.
Right.
And so why did the author not put them in? They weren't important. Why weren't they important? Well, we don't know. Maybe because he assumed that everyone who had already known the story so well, I'm just going to give you the abbreviated version of it. Sure. And so maybe the details weren't important because everyone just kind of knew, because that's what we did. We sat around just like you like to do, and we told stories to each other. And that was the only way that we learned things until it was written down, and it's finally written down. And, by the time we get to Moses, which, if you want to go biblically, is hundreds of years, almost several thousand years after the fact, right? And so it's just may not be that. And when I say it's not important, it's not important. Like, the other thing is, it's what's important is what's in there, because it's what's the lesson that we're being taught. Right. I will stand here and I will tell you the Bible is not a science book. And if you try to use it as a science book as a Christian, you'll be laughed out, because you're not going to reach non-Christians by trying to use a non-science book as a science book. And that was like one of the hardest lessons I had to learn as a Christian and as a biologist was I have to be able to understand what the Bible is telling. And I had to understand the deeper meaning, right? That what is the midrash of this? And because when I'm talking to people who are scientists who are not Christians, how do I communicate with them, right? And it's like Paul says, right? I have to be everything to everyone, right? And it's that concept and idea. And I'm not saying I do it great. I'm not trying to be the hold up example.
No, you're terrible, but
but I am terrible at it. I'm not going to lie and sit here and deny that.
I'm kidding.
No, but we have to be cautious with it. And so So when we look at this, we can say, yep, Eve gave birth to all these people. And I'm fine with that. I don't really care. In all reality, like I know people do, but it's not, my faith doesn't hinge on whether Eve gave birth to the entire population. Right. Now, I'll toss this in. Scientifically, that we have a individual that we call mitochondrial Eve, which is every human on the face of the earth can trace their mitochondrial DNA to this individual some like 20,000 years ago or something like that. Love it. It fits both my stories.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think it's okay to say, even the Midrash writes about them all coming from Eve. And that's fine. It makes logical sense, right? Because why would some stranger want to kill Cain?
Right.
Because he killed his brother. Like,
right. Well, even the punishment, you can't kill someone 7 times over.
Right.
So when the punishment is if anyone kills Cain, they're going to get killed 7 times. That doesn't even
doesn't even make sense.
Like, you can't get killed 7 times. So
right.
I mean, there is a lot of poetry and allegory in here, I think, holding on to that, but also
correct. And that goes back to the idea of the Bible is really Tanakh. Yeah. Right. And so that's another acronym for all the different styles, and poetry is one of the styles. Yeah. And if you're like, but it's not, read Psalms.
Yeah.
Read Lamentations. Read, there's poetry in the Bible.
Quite a bit.
And the Bible cites things that are not biblical also.
Yeah.
I
know. You're getting me in trouble here tonight,
I know. Well, so. I'm look, I'm going to stand up there in 2 weeks and they can hurl tomatoes at me.
Hurl tomatoes at Chris. So cool. Yeah, that was fun.
Steve will pass them out.
What else you got? Anything else?
Yeah. So this is really interesting. So first verse, chapter 5. Is that right?
Chapter 4.
That's chapter 4. So Adam was intimate with his wife Eve, and she conceived and gave birth to Cain. She said, I had a male child with the Lord's help. And depending on your translation, it just reads slightly different, but that word with, a lot of commentators have stuck on that word with because it's interesting. So the word with, it's a preposition and the form of speech that it's being used in. The problem with it is it can be interpreted 2 different ways. There's the standard way, like where you look at it and it's like, well, I made it with the Lord. And so in other words, the Lord helped me in this process, however you look at that. But the other way of looking at it is it's kind of like in spite of. It's antagonistic in that regard. And so a lot of the commentators I was reading when they were talking about the 2 sides of this story and this sentence is, he's probably still mad. He's mad. We just read that she got kicked out of Eden, and she's kind of bitter about it. And so there's this idea that Eve is actually like spitting in God's face at a certain point here, where she's like, God created life, but look what I created life here too. And so again, like this idea that she's bitter about it, and she's making this exclamation in terms of being antagonistic to God.
Yeah, I don't read it like that. I don't see it like that. Yeah.
Well, you have to go to the Hebrew and see that word with. And I know most of us don't look at it that way, but it's interesting because then it starts to, it helps again, because if we're reading this allegorically or if we're reading this in that regard, now it makes Cain make sense. He has that spark of rebellion and that Eve had in the beginning, and he probably grew up seeing that. Now Eve may have softened throughout that time, right?
Yeah.
But he might have that, and that leads to it. And it's interesting too because it also bookends the story. Because if Eve starts rebellious against God at the beginning of the Cain and Abel story, in terms of I'm giving life, right? And who's the only other person who could take life was God, but here you have Cain taking life at the same time.
Yeah.
So there's this allegorical bookmark that you can, bookends that you see. The other thing too, we talked about the mark of Cain. So that's interpreted a couple different ways. Like you said, not a physical mark, like some of it may have seen as a city. Some of the midrashic interpretations are that it might have been like a letter of God's name on his forehead that people would actually see. The really interesting one, and this gets into Lamech also, is that it was a horn. A physical horn grew out of him. And so he's marked with
a unicorn.
Sort of, yeah. And so where that gets really interesting is when you tie that into...
Send all your emails to Chris Bachman.
It's in the Midrash, I'm just telling you. And so the story of Lamech and Tubal Cain's blind.
Yeah.
And he and Lamech takes him out hunting, and Lamech sees something stirring in the brush, and encourages Tubal Cain to shoot him.
Yeah.
And
the blind guy.
Yeah, and so does, and it turns out it was Cain.
Oh,
and so
okay.
yeah, because they mistook the horn for an animal and all
okay.
that. Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting thing. There was a book author Brad Meltzer wrote.
Brad,
and so called the I think it's called the Mark of Cain or Book of Cain or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it ties Superman and Cain together.
Oh, Lordy. We have now jumped the shark.
We have jumped the shark on this one. But it's interesting because in that one, the horn idea comes out, but the horn is a physical structure and it's imprinted. And like if you were to ink it and roll it on a piece of paper, it tells the story, but it's a story of family.
Okay.
And so there's kind of this really beautiful thing to it. The other thing I had was...
Can you tell why this didn't make the sermon?
Yeah, you could tell why all this didn't make the sermon. Mark of Cain, and my brother's keeper. Oh, the offerings.
Yeah.
So this was interesting too, because I think you gave the interpretation that one was given with the heart and one wasn't given with the heart. And that's a lot of commentators interpret it that way. But it's interesting to look at it too, because why do we take that as the idea? Because I think you cited first fruits and not first fruits, right? But it's interesting because if we're using that, anytime we're talking about offerings, we're actually talking about Levitical law, right? And so the laws are very specific about what types of offerings are given and how they're given. And so the interesting thing about the offering is that both offerings are Levitical in nature, right? Yep. So there, when you give a grain offering, it's not your first fruits from the grain, right? It doesn't have to be. And what's interesting too, even about Abel's, is he's not really giving the best offering. It is the firstborn and it is the fats. But if you're really giving an offering of that to God, you actually give the whole. You don't just give that component of the best parts to it. And so it still begs the question of, well, why did God pick Abel over Cain? Yep. And I think it's a bigger and more difficult theological question because it's one we don't like the answer to. And the answer is grace. Yeah. Right? There's a choice that God makes. It's the same reason of what, and he just chose Abel's over Cain's.
Yeah, I don't know.
I know, again, it doesn't sit right, and we don't like it. But
no, because he gives Cain an opportunity to come back. And so it's not, I think Cain made a mistake in what he gave, and then God says, hey, you got a choice here. What path are you going to go down? And then, because otherwise that's a God that's setting you up to, hey, I'm going to set you up to see what happens. And that's not a God
Well, then explain Job.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Job's a whole different conversation.
You're right, it is. Yeah. But I mean, like, there's that idea that sometimes we're tested and seeing how we respond to that test.
Yeah, you could say that.
Right.
That, yeah.
And so I don't think it's wrong. I think it's icky feeling.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the God we feel like we want to follow, but God tests us sometimes and puts us in a situation where he's like, look, I'm going to have you prove yourself to me. I mean, and you could see it in other Bible characters as you go through, right?
Yeah.
Like what... one of my favorites is Jonah. Like, what's he do with Jonah? Tells him to go do something. He doesn't, and call it a test, call it whatever, and there's still disobedience in it, right? Right. And it's still the choice of the person of how to respond to that. And the best part of Jonah is like once he goes to the king, and the king's like, "Yeah, we're good. I'm," and he gets mad.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it does feel icky, but it's one of those thought processes of, why is this in here? And again, I don't know. I find it interesting. So,
all right. So now we come to everybody's favorite segment. By everybody, I mean
mine.
One person's favorite segment.
It's even become my least favorite segment at this point.
Here we go. Oh yeah.
Let me get to Hebrews.
In the ancient scrolls, a name appears so sleek. Melchizedek, the priest and king, so unique.
It's so lame, but I actually listen to this during the week. This is our theme song.
Is that so you can learn how to pronounce it?
No, because I like the beat. I don't know. Anyways, okay, what do you got for us this week?
Perfect sacrifice, right?
Yeah.
And so what the idea of a sacrifice and in Cain and Abel, and what's the better of the sacrifices? The same thing with, and really it's about gift, right? And giving. And so what are we willing to give? And so you have Melchizedek accepting the 10% of that tithe of Abraham's, and you have God accepting Abel's gift, right? And both of them, the interesting part is both of them are before Levitical law. Yeah. And so these are examples of gifts given freely of the heart and given to the Creator, the one true God, Yahweh. And so it's kind of an interesting idea.
That's awesome.
That you have those two things that are happening. And so, Melchizedek is that first one that we read about the tithe, and it's not the first offering given, but it's the first. Melchizedek brings in that first idea of we're giving our full 10%.
That's awesome. Well, we got a new segment. Not really a segment. We got some feedback because I don't know if people know if you listen to the podcast, if you use a podcast player, there's a little button on this that says send us your feedback. When you do that, we get your feedback, and you can also leave a comment on YouTube or Spotify. We'll get all those, but when we do, we like to share them. And so this is a feedback. Chris doesn't know about this feedback yet.
Nope.
So I'm just going to read it to you how we got it.
All right.
Hey, guys, listen to your podcast while at work. So we already know this person's a good worker because they're paying attention at work. It was very informative as well interesting. So now I know they're not listening to the podcast. So not only are they a horrible worker, but they're also a liar. One of our fans. During the podcast, Chris, you mentioned that on Saturday you go through your sermon 3 times back to back. Now, he only says back to back. It should be back to back to back, but that's fine. Does that also mean you practiced the facial hair segment? I mean, you did have to get that ironed out too, so I understand if you did. I love this guy. You're back in my good graces. Steve, did you really have to do the math concerning facial hair? I believe you intentionally left out your percentage of facial hair talk on the podcast. Shame on you, Steve. LOL. Let me introduce myself, Tom Nolan. You know the guy with metal legs, just in case you would like to dispute my facial hair accusations. Have a great day, guys. We love you, Tommy. You know we're just teasing you there.
I thought
How awesome is that?
I was originally going to say, is that Daniel that wrote that?
I love that comment. I think that is so awesome. That is so awesome.
I will answer that question. The answer is no. And I don't remember if I said this.
You really didn't practice it?
No, and I'll tell you why I don't. So every sermon I write, I put a placeholder in there that says "make fun of Steve" here.
That's good
because Steve will rip on me from time to time from the pulpit. He did not this week. I will give him that. He extended so much grace to me.
Well, because I take what I do seriously.
Yeah, except for I could think of several different jokes that you've told about me from the pulpit. One of them was on lunch and buying lunch.
Oh, yeah. This is the cheapest guy in the world right next to me here. This guy. Don't go out to lunch with him. He always forgets his wallet.
So I always have a placeholder because I don't always know if it's an appropriate joke to tell or if it fits with what I'm going to say. And so I extend a lot of grace because I can go back to all my manuscripts and you can see some joke about Steve. It literally just will say some joke about Steve and like I have nothing written there.
And now we wonder why Chris goes long because he has these open spots where he decides he's a comedian. So awesome. Hey, I do have a surprise for you.
Okay. Another one.
Yeah, this is a good one.
Thanks for the letter, by the way. I appreciate that.
From Tom?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was very kind. Very kind.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, very much. Very, very much so. I was been working this week on a couple of different things, and one of these is I want to be able to sell shirts. Not for Sunday shirts. And people don't know, but the church...
Oh, okay. The church... I you want to sell shirts in general.
I'm not a shirt salesman. No, the church has a merch store. If people don't know that, they go to lincolnway.org. There's a merch button, and you can buy, like, hats and shirts and sweatshirts, and it's really cool. And so we're adding a little tab there, not for Sunday mornings, and we'll have 2 shirts. One will have our logo on it, and one, if you're watching online, you can see...
I gotta get one of these.
I have designed this.
Oh, nice.
Get your knowledge nuggets fast. Not for Sunday morning. Kind of a play on what Carissa did there.
Yeah.
So that'll be on the back of the shirt with our logo on the front, and you'll be able to get those. I think in the next couple of weeks they're going to be online. So I think so.
That's a surprise for me because I didn't know any of that.
I know. I thought you'd like it.
Well, and I didn't know. Shame on me. I didn't know we had a merch store.
Oh yeah, haven't you seen I wear like a hat and I got a couple shirts.
Yeah, but I just thought they were just things.
Yeah. Matt Shank has like every piece of it. Every time I see him, he's wearing a new sweatshirt. I'm like, where did you get
I mean, I have our anniversary sweatshirt and T-shirt.
Oh yeah,
that was the only one.
We got it there. So
I didn't know that.
Once it's out there, we'll make sure to get some. So
I love it.
All right, upcoming next week we have Miriam. We're going to talk about Miriam,
and we're not preaching. Neither one of us are.
No, Daniel's going to speak next week, so that'll be fun to have him come in, and he's going to come and do the podcast with us.
He will. I'm looking forward to it because it's been a long time since we've done podcasts together. The three of us.
Yeah, it'll be neat.
So yeah, it'll be interesting. I'll tell him. I hope he listens to this. I feel sorry for you for having to do Miriam because if Cain and Abel was hard, I think Miriam's going to be even harder.
Oh yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be fun
because I'm really interested in seeing where he goes with that.
Yeah, me too.
So
that's what I got. That's what you got. We're ready for hopefully a great week.
Yeah, we'll.
It's VBS week here at the church.
It is VBS here at the church. That'll be fun. So
Christmas in July. It's going to be awesome. Yeah, it's going to be wild.
It'll be good. So, all right. Well, thanks for listening. Steve always wants me to say, smash that like button.
The subscribe button.
The like button, and then you subscribe on top of that.
Oh, that's
Turn on notifications.
Don't do any of that. See y'all.
All the other podcast things. Have a good one.
Digging through truths that don't quite land. The bits and pieces that didn't get said, from the pulpit to the podcast instead. Not for Sunday mornings, no halos here. We're breaking it down with a laugh and a cheer. Knowledge nuggets flying wild and free. Welcome to the chaos, grab your coffee. Dives into the things we missed, a little offbeat with a thoughtful twist, from ancient scrolls to the latest.